Hello and welcome to the WBC Connect 2020. My name is Kevin Lane. I'm the Technical Sales Support Manager for the Americas for Fermentis. Hope you're enjoying the Congress so far and have already found some great educational sessions to attend. If you have any questions following this short presentation, we welcome you to visit either myself or my colleagues at our virtual room to either just discuss this product or discuss any of the other products, or just to get more information on any of these videos that we're recording. So today I'd like to talk about a new product from Fermentis. It's in our SafBrew category portfolio. It's called SafBrew LA-01. This strain is intended for low or non-alcoholic beers, just with fermentation. So this is a Saccharomyces variety Chevalieri strain that we selected for the fermentation characteristics, but also for the aromatic fractions, the flavor profile, representing really what is typical of beer fermentation characteristics. So first, I'll start with just describing the microorganism, what we intended to do from the beginning. So for a lower non-alcoholic beer, you want the strain to be maltose negative. Again, to present that aromatic fraction that's similar or the same as what you would normally expect in a beer. And then with this initial introduction into this NA category, we were looking for a low phenol expression coming from the yeast. In terms of the alcohol production, based on a standard mash regime, you're going to end up with a typical sugar concentration of 10 to 15% glucose, 50 to 60% maltose, 10 to 20% maltotriose, and then 15 to 20% dextrins beyond that. With the selection of this Chevalieri strain, we were looking to find a strain that only ferments the simple sugars, in this case just glucose or potentially fructose, but only to ferment that 10 to 15% concentration of sugar in the wort when you're following a standard mash regime. In terms of the fermentations that we performed, here's 4 examples of kinetics from just using this strain. The fermentation limit, attenuation limit was reached 60 to 75 hours into fermentation. You can see really the difference between 6, 8, 10, and 15 Plato, and how fast that is, and what the alcohol percentage was that was achieved. For the NA production in North America and in most parts of the world, the limit is 0.5% alcohol. So in order to target that percentage of alcohol, we recommend that you're somewhere between 7 and 8 Plato, which will give you right about that 0.5% alcohol production. Again, that's with a standard mash. You can adjust the mash by hitting different temperatures for your mash in and extracting different carbohydrate profiles. But for a standardized mash, for a standardized carb profile, you're looking at roughly 7 to 8 Plato to hit that 0.5% alcohol. Additionally, with this strain, we wanted to achieve somewhere around 10 to 15% attenuation. And again, in all 4 of these scenarios, all of these trials, the ADF was 13 to 14%. And again, in that 7 to 8 Plato range where you're going to have the 0.5% alcohol, you're right at about 13, maybe 13.5% attenuation. What's interesting with this strain was really the complexity of the beer that was produced. Even with only that 10 to 15% attenuation, you're really having a complex media, complex fermentation flavor produced, where you do have some compounds that are being produced that are above the threshold value. For example, acetaldehyde here at 8 Plato is above threshold. But you're also having a complex mixture of other fermentation flavors, isoamyl alcohol, isobutanol, diacetyl, all being below threshold. But because of them being present, their synergies actually give the flavor of beer, even if they're not above threshold value. Additionally, the strain is POF positive, but because it's a small 10 to 15% attenuation, It's not an expression of phenolics as you would expect from Hefeweizen or Belgian style beer, but more just complexity adding to the beer. Additionally, we did do some fermentations colder to see if it was possible to limit the production of volatile compounds, kind of to slow down the yeast and have more lager-like fermentation, which it was successful, but really we recommend to ferment above 10 degrees C just because it shows a very slow fermentation with a potential risk of non-complete fermentation of those simple sugars when you're at 10 degrees. But there were really no significant aromatic differences. There wasn't off flavor produced when we were at cooler temperatures. In terms of the experimental trials that we did, really the first conclusions that we can make about SafBrew LA-01 is that it produces well-balanced beers that have a slight phenol character to them, but without defect. The fermentations are preferably above 10 degrees C. The fermentations are successful at 10 C, but it's slower and could potentially have the risk of unfermented simple sugars. Contains simple sugars, it contains residual sugars in the resulting beer, which makes the beer quite fragile in terms of, potential contaminations in the brewery. So for that reason, we strongly recommend, we insist that the beer be pasteurized in the package. Fermented standpoint on that is very strong, that we say it's mandatory to pasteurize the beer in the package. And that's for your safety, your brewery workers' safety, for the distribution network, and for the consumer's safety. Really, the ending conclusions to the SafBrew LA-01 is that the pitching rate is 50 grams per hectoliter, a fairly wide range for temperature, 15 up to 25 C. With a standard mashing regime, you will have an apparent degree of fermentation around 15, maybe 13 up to 15%. The alcohol produced will be 0.5% ABV for 7 to 8 Plato, somewhere in that range, with a pH of the beer being around 4.5. This strain, again, is a Chevalier, produces no off flavors. It is P-off positive, but usually that's just more of a complexity to the beer than something that's truly recognizable as phenol. With it, we do recommend a pasteurization of 50 up to 100 pasteurization units. We've done some studies on that and found that 50 PU is the minimum that we would want, or that you would want, to make sure that the beer is stable. With SafBrew LA-01, we do not recommend repitching because of this being a fragile beer in the end. So anytime that you can avoid repitching, for sure beneficial, and obviously for this, no re-fermentation for bottles, because that just creates even more potential introduction of a different microorganism. Thank you for watching this video. Discover more about SafBrew LA-01 by visiting our WBC virtual booth or downloading our app and following us on social networks. Thank you.